Ma. You know it?
This is your preparing before the show, right?
Price candlesticks.
Price candlesticks.
They're super easy to read. It's not complicated. And by the end of the session, you're gonna learn what supply and demand is, what the mechanics are behind supply and demand, and how they define the price candlesticks that you see in the chart. Understanding the simple mechanics of price movement. Since when does skipping the basics make you a master?
Since never.
Alright, so hit me. What stuck with you from last time?
What?
I'm thinking with you.
Last time we spoke about the price, the opening price, the closing price, upper week and lower week, and the body, yes.
Last time we indeed looked at the line chart of a price. Then you also learned how to draw a price candlestick from these price differences. Then of course the two types of candles we have. We indeed looked at the body of a candlestick and at the wicks. Now at the end of the session I asked you, what do you think made the price go up and down like this?
The crowd who was purchasing the food.
Indeed.
Radically, yeah.
So it's supply versus?
Demand.
So you were talking about demand. So demand.
The askers.
And
yeah.
supply would be?
Seller.
Now let's talk about supply and demand in depth, but in a very simplified way so it truly sticks with you. How would you define supply in your own words?
Is a place that has certain items.
In simple words, how much stuff is there available? How many are on the shelf? How many are for sale? Or how common or limited is it on the market? As for demand, what do you think it is?
A hungry crowd.
How much stuff do people want? How much are people taking off the shelf? How much are people trying to buy? How desired is it right now? And how much of it are people asking for? So let's look at this in more detail, at this dynamic of supply and demand. Why that Gucci bag costs more than your rent? How many Gucci bags of a certain model do you think are in a store ready to be sold?
2 to 3.
How many people do you think want or are desiring that one Gucci bag?
A lot of people, yeah. A lot of people.
Hundreds, if not thousands of people. So in this specific case for Gucci bags, supply is more than demand or supply is less than demand?
Supply is less.
Supply is less. And how much do you think a Gucci bag can cost when the supply is so little in a store?
2,000 euros?
3,300.
Right.
So when supply is relatively lower than demand, what happened to the price?
The price is higher.
The price is higher.
Higher, yes.
We're gonna look at the phone case example because trust me, there's 5 million more like your phone case. So what happens when there is way more stuff to sell than people actually want to buy?
Become cheaper.
It becomes very cheap. The price becomes very low. Like on Temu, for example, there is a huge supply of phone cases and look at how cheap the price is. Like 69 euro cents, 70 euro cents.
50 cents?
58 euro cents. In Temu, supply is higher than demand. So what happens to the price?
Prices become lower.
The price becomes lower. So how do you think this translates to a chart?
That's a good question.
We're gonna look at a famous chart and we're gonna simplify it. On the vertical line, you're gonna see the price. Where at the lowest point of the line, how much would the price be?
From 0 to 500.
Then on the horizontal line is the number of stuff, the quantity.
Stuff. From 0 to 600.
So if I'm standing here, how many stuff are we talking about?
300.
300 stuff. Question for you. The higher the number of stuff sold, the higher or the lower the price?
The lower the price.
The lower the price. How do you think this line on the chart would look like based on this statement?
Price is gonna go down.
The opposite. The higher the number of stuff being asked for, the higher or the lower the price?
The higher the price.
So how would the line on this chart look like and why? Based on this second statement.
It's gonna be like an up line.
Because the higher the number of things are being asked for, the higher the price. So if this red one is called the supply line, the green one is called?
Demand.
Notice where the lines meet?
Yes, the dot, the yellow dot.
This is what people call the
Equilibrium price.
equilibrium price.
Equilibrium.
What do you think equilibrium means?
Balance.
But because we don't like fancy words, we call it the sweet spot where the market goes.
Cool one.
Gucci, we're good here. So it's the price at that very moment. Here, where supply and demand meet,
They're crossing.
what would be the price here?
250, I guess.
So let's use the brain even more. Do you remember this chart?
I remember that chart.
We're gonna have some fun with it. It's a Saturday morning. It's food market day and it's 9 a.m. What is the price at 9 a.m.?
4 years.
And as time goes by, it's gonna hit 12. We go from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Where most people finally have some time and go to the same food market as you. What happened to the demand compared to supply between this time?
Didn't increase.
Demand increased in relation to supply, correct?
Supply, definitely, yeah.
So there's more demand than?
Supply.
And what is the new price now that demand is higher than supply?
8 euros.
Price became higher. Now, from 12 p.m., we're gonna go to 4 p.m. There's a soccer match, a Clasico, and then everyone is home glued to the TV and they don't want to miss. What happened to the demand in relation to supply?
Decreased.
So supply is higher than demand. And what happens when supply becomes relatively higher than demand?
They're gonna decrease. They're gonna decrease. You hear my voice? You hear my voice?
the price decreases. So sometimes there was more supply than demand, and other times there was more demand than
supply.
this, what we just saw when the price went up and then down and then up a little bit, this is how the changes in supply and demand results in changes in the price. And changes in the price, from these changes in the price, you can draw these price candlesticks. So what causes a price candlestick to form?
So that means every time when the prices go higher, it's because of the demand is higher than the supplier.
And what is the end result of the price going like that?
The candlestick, the body,
The
weight,
shape of the
shape,
candlestick.
yeah.
Because imagine that the whole time demand is higher than supply. That means that the price is continuously going down or continuously going up.
Increase.
If it's increasing and increasing and increasing. So at that point, does the price candlestick have any upper wick or
No.
No.
Doesn't have anything.
So do you see
No
how
upper, no lower, yeah.
no upper, no lower. So do you see how what happens between supply and demand defines whether a candlestick has an upper wick, a lower wick, how big the body is?
It looks like a war.
So what causes a price candlestick to form at the end of the day?
Supply and demand.
The war between supply and demand. The tug of war, the game between supply and demand.
What's called? Tug.
Tug of war.
THUG.
TUG.
TUG.
Now I want to look at it for real.
That's my grandmother. How do you know?
My question to you is, by looking at the candlestick that is printing, I want you to tell me what happened between demand and supply.
Now it's now it's decreasing, so supply it's demanding right now.
Supply is demanding?
Demanding is the one who's driving.
The sellers are in charge.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's wait for the candlestick to keep moving. Here, what happened there?
Now again, supply was higher than demand, so the price decreased.
What happened there?
Now the demand is higher than supply.
What happened there?
Supply was the supply was higher than demand.
So what does this upper wick mean?
Representation of the price was there, but then it goes down.
And why did it go down?
Because the supply was fighting as well for the same place.
Basically, the story is the price tried to reach this level that you see on the right, 1176, but then the sellers stepped in. So if we would see a candlestick that has a long lower wick, this one for example,
Yes.
what is the story then?
Is that the supplies tried to dominate, but then demand was the one who dominated the market.
The sellers stepped in, they tried to push the price all the way back down, but the buyer stepped in and pushed the price higher. That's the importance of the wicks, of the upper wicks and the lower wicks. I want to highlight that reading the price candlesticks is just one tiny part of the story. So absolutely never enter a trade or exit a trade based on the shape of the candlestick. And that has to do with something called volume. It's not something I trade with. I'm still experimenting to see if I'm going to trade with volume or not, because it happens many times that you read a story. For example, here the buyers tried to dominate, but then the seller stepped in, creating this upper wick. But depending on the volume bar corresponding with it, it could be a trap, a fake signal to make you think that sellers are stepping in, but in reality, there is buying going on. So only looking at price candlesticks is a tiny skill to have, but it's not the only thing you're gonna need. I like to say it when you're gonna go solve a crime as the FBI. You go and you see blood on the floor and you see a bullet on the floor. Just because you see a bullet on the floor doesn't mean that there was a murder. It looks like a murder, but did a murder really happen, or was it just like to look like a murder? That's how I see trading. It's a game to see, okay, what is really happening? What are the two concepts that define price of something?
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand.
Why did you put that picture there? It's cute. I was dying.
You were sleeping. And what happens when supply becomes relatively lower than demand?
It's gonna become lower price.
Remember the Gucci
Oh,
bags?
fuck it, yes. It was a tricky question. Guys, laugh. It's fine. I'm learning.
What happens when demand becomes lower than supply?
The other way is gonna become cheaper.
And what type of chart does the price movement within a certain period end up forming? A beautiful line chart. What can we translate this line chart into?
The candlestick.
A beautiful price candlestick. So we're just getting warmed up. So see you next round.
I sweat already.